Hi there. Welcome to This Week in Massachusetts Theater, Episode 6, The Undiscovered Country. Welcome back. As always, we appreciate your support and continued interest as we grow. Now, in our last episode, I found out that there were a couple of sound issues. I told you I'm new at this, so hang in there as I learn the process. But I'm reissuing the reviews from last week's episode with some augmented quality in this week's episode. So the two reviews that we're going to hear again are from The House on Haunted Hill by Quantum Poet Players and The Counter from Umbrella Arts Center in Concord. This week, we're going to feature 3 new theater reviews for shows happening in the state of Massachusetts and in the state of Connecticut, and then take a look at shows coming up in October. The shows that we're going to look at or listen to review this week are Dungeons & Dragons, the 20-sided tavern, which just played at the Bach Schubert, but is currently still on the road if you want to catch it. Can from Sullivan Rep down in Dedham is also playing, and Murder on the Orient Express from the Theater of Northeastern Connecticut at the Bradley Playhouse down in Putnam, Connecticut. So this coming weekend is going to be another jam-packed series of shows, including Theater at the Mount doing Cole Porter's Anything Goes, in Gardner, Noel Coward's Blithe Spirit, happening from New Players Theater Guild in Fitchburg, and another show at Umbrella Arts, Jonathan Larson's Tick, Tick, Boom. So, tune in next week for another fun-filled episode, and now, on to this one. Enjoy. The following abbreviated review is courtesy of Amanda Baldwin and is for a touring production that has already passed, having recently been performed at the Bach Center Schubert Theater in Boston. But if you get a chance to catch Dungeons & Dragons, the 20-sided tavern in a venue near you, then please do so. Alex Stomploy plays the tavern keeper, who is tasked to oversee and rule over the following, while Cassidy Sledge plays the dungeon master tasked to tell the story. Both performers are phenomenal at both managing the crowd and keeping the story of the adventuring party on their quest to save the world on track. Additional performers include Diego F. Salinas, Madeline Murphy, and special guest star Jack Lepiars made up the members of this performance's adventuring party. Celebrated circus performer and social media personality Lepiars, a.k.a. Jacques Zwipper, joins the 20-sided tavern cast as Mischief. The trio works really well together, keeping up with one another amongst all the improvisation between themselves and the choices made by the dice and the audience. All 5 cast members are outstanding and hilarious. The Bach Center Schubert Theater audience for 20-sided tavern was also able to get into the act as well, choosing each other's players, characters, how successful some feats are, what choices certain characters make, and much more. A lot of the story for Dungeons & Dragons, the 20-sided tavern, is in the hands of each current audience, and some audience members get called upon to name side characters or even go on stage to participate. With this cast of 5 actors and over 30 playable characters, audiences will experience an expansive fantasy world set in the Forgotten Realms, face riddles, puzzles, combat, and more to help shape the story. Dungeons & Dragons, the 20-sided tavern, is based on the global role-playing phenomenon Dungeons & Dragons. And as you step into the heart of these forgotten realms, you are in for an interactive fantasy adventure where audience get to choose their heroes, battle monsters, and help 3 adventurers on an epic quest to save the world. With Dungeons & Dragons, the 20-sided tavern, you definitely will never see the same show twice, considering how much of it is based on audience voting and participation, as well as dice rolls. At the Bach Center Schubert Theater event held in Boston from October 3rd through October 5th, it was announced that this was the biggest 20-sided tavern show to date, with about 1,400 seats celebrated with a toast at the beginning of the show. At approximately 2 hours, 30 minutes with 1 intermission, Dungeons & Dragons, the 20-sided tavern, was created by David Carpenter and is co-produced by Carpenter with Showpath Entertainment Limited under license by Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast. For tickets and more information on where the show is traveling to next, visit the 20sidedtavern.com. www.theumbrellarts.com. Two characters who feel they have begun to know one another beyond their established waitress-customer relationship reveal suppressed secrets in The Counter, a new play by Megan Kennedy, now playing at Umbrella Art Center in Concord. The short play by Kennedy is aptly titled as The Counter, immediately evokes ideas and perceptions of things upon which one can count, such as counting the number of people that appear within the play. 3, by the way. Or maybe counting the number of minutes the play runs. 75, by the way. Or perhaps certain plot elements within the play just might run counter to how you expect the story to unfold, which it does to some extent. And yet, it also can evoke ideas and perceptions about things that can be counted upon, like friends, people you feel you can trust. Even though you may have only known them a short time, you feel you can confide in them and count on them, and especially in a time of need. And all of this takes place in the most normal of places, at the counter of a local diner. The Umbrella Art Center's single set design of a diner for the show is stunningly detailed, providing director Alex Lanati with the perfect landscape for painting this tale that may seem familiar and a bit unsurprising, but still captures and, more importantly, maintains our interest thanks to the seemingly sincere chemistry between its two stars. Now, technically not a two-hander show, Counter actually has 3 performers, but almost all of the play centers on the multiple exchanges over the course of a few days that take place between only 2 of the characters. Katie, played by Margaret Clark, is a waitress at the diner who moved to town 2 years ago. Ranny plays longtime resident Paul, who comes into the diner every day and chats with Katie. What begins as everyday light banter soon becomes or evolves into Paul suggesting they have a connection and would like them to become more acquainted with each other, not romantically, just socially. Katie, reluctant at first, realizes she has no other friends in town, close or otherwise, so she agrees. Their interaction is limited to these breakfasts at the diner as Paul helps Katie remove some old and non-listened to voicemail messages. However, as more and more of these 2 characters and their respective stories are revealed, Paul makes an odd request of Katie. We soon learn of Paul's family, and in a stirring performance by Ranny, discover Paul has been dealt a fatal familial blow that no family member should suffer through, let alone being the one left behind, fearing they may meet a similar tragic fate. So he makes this request of Katie to help him not meet a similar tragedy, which, to Paul, is inevitable. Katie is resistant to reveal her past to Paul as to her life before moving to town. Yet she soon lets him know her own levels of desperation and despair, and her coming to town was not for new opportunities, but rather escape. While Maureen Keeler as Peg is quite impressive in her only scene in the play, unfortunately there's just not enough character development there to speak of, or with which the actor can work to make it more interesting. However, it is a significant plot point for the backstory of Paul. There are certainly unanswered questions left for us to ponder by the end of the play, but that is a strength, not a weakness, as it will keep folks continuously engaged, guessing as to certain meanings behind its conclusion, long after they exit the theater. That said, again, there's still virtually no surprises to speak of here, at least none that are worth counting. But the one thing you can count on is enjoying the rapport and relationship between Paul and Katie, thanks to the tremendous chemistry between actors Ranny and Clark. At approximately 75 minutes with no intermission, The Counter by Megan Kennedy continues at Umbrella Art Center in Concord through November 9th, 2025. For tickets and more information, contact Umbrella Art Center at 978-371-0820 or visit theumbrellaarts.org. Sullivan Rep kicks up their heels and occasionally lifts up their skirts in Dedham with Can Can, a musical which is a fun, frolicking October treat that deserves to be seen. The musical, with music and lyrics by Cole Porter and book by A. Burrows, is shrewdly directed and choreographed in the round for Sullivan Rep by Dan Sullivan, and it is truly the Sullivan Rep Productions choreography that excels here, as Burrows' book is a bit trite and unsurprising. Now, let's not forget that the late Mr. Burrows was the writer responsible for giving the world Guys and Dolls, How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying, Silk Stockings, and more. Yet while his book for Can is entertaining enough, even with Burrows' skillful text propelled by the songs of Cole Porter, overall neither the story nor the score is as memorable as from other musicals from this period. The original Broadway production of Can did have a respectable run, though, lasting for 2 years from 1953 and closing in 1955 after 892 performances and garnering Tony Awards for equally legendary actress Gwen Verdon and choreographer Michael Kidd. So Can is a good musical, if not a great musical, but you know what? Sometimes a good musical can still be done really, really well and be just as entertaining, and it is here thanks to the entire company at Sullivan Rep. The cast and creative team for Sullivan Rep really have come through in style, presenting the story of Can, which takes place in Paris in 1893 and revolves around a scandalous antics of showgirls at a Montmartre dance hall in Montmartre owned by Lamont Pistache, played by Carly Evans. Pistache is in danger of having her business shut down by a pious new judge, Aristide Forestier, played by Anthony Rinaldi. Evans is simply enchanting as the worldly no-nonsense Pistache who commands respect from her employees, her patrons, and also, surprisingly, Aristide, who learns quite quickly that Pistache is no ordinary woman. Rinaldi shows us both the judicial side of Aristide and the humane side of the judge, which throws him into a direct conflict of what ordinances dictate as to the supposed offensive risque material performed at her business, i.e., the Can. The chemistry is apparent from the moment the two meet, but unfortunately the conflict putting them at odds seems a bit contrived and desperate, as we know full well they will, spoiler alert, strive to overcome any obstacles in order to be together. The vibrant dancers involved in Sullivan Rep's Can choreography during the show are truly all put through their paces, performing in multiple grueling dances and reprises that require great stamina while wearing heavily layered costumes, and none fails to entertain. Speaking of costumes, which are gorgeous, the overall costuming for the Sullivan Rep staging was also very cleverly organized, saving the expected Can attire for the finale and keeping the Can dancers in garb more appropriate to the time and place of the show. Evans excels in pastiche solo moments with the Cole Porter tunes Never Give Anything Away, Live and Let Live, Allez-vous-en, Every Man is a Stupid Man, and I Love Paris. Meanwhile, Rinaldi shows off his clearly substantial vocal prowess with his Porter numbers I Am in Love and It's All Right with Me. A parallel storyline apparently was needed by Burrows to fill the show out, referring to it as a subplot feels diminishing its importance and quite honestly ludicrous. One of Pistache's dancers, a laundry girl by day named Claudine, played by Bridget Sullivan, is in love with struggling broke local sculptor Boris, played by A.J. Lyman. An art critic named Hilaire, played by Kevin Hanley, aggressively pursues Claudine, and Boris uses this to his advantage, urging for Hilaire to have dinner with Claudine in hopes that he might be persuaded to peruse Boris's sculptures and subsequently give him a positive review. And probably one of the most uplifting numbers in Act 2, Never Be an Artist. Aristide is advised and encouraged by Boris and fellow artist Théophile, played by Andy Ross, Hercule, played by Ryan Pereira, Etienne, played by Dom Papagallo, and their model, played by Hannah Shidanian, to look at things from a different perspective. The above helps to connect the otherwise unconnected plots and does so in an entertaining way. Sullivan, Lyman, and Hanley all give impressive performances, supported by a talented, lighthearted ensemble. Members of the Sullivan Rep portray multiple roles throughout the story, and more importantly, many are featured prominently in dance numbers, whereas the show's Pastiche and Aristide, surprisingly, are not. The Sullivan Rep ensemble also assists in scene changes, all of which flow seamlessly. Also, using minimal set pieces allowed for quicker scene changes, which, given the show's 3-hour runtime, including intermission, maximized time and was an efficient use of space. Standout ensemble numbers include Maiden's Typical of France, Apache Dance, and the show's title number, Can Can. And for more information and to hear the entire review, please visit METRMag.com. But to conclude, as the subtext clearly examines what is moral and what is obscenity, that aside, there really is very little here that audiences haven't seen before in other musicals of the period, which is probably a fundamental reason why many revivals have crashed and burned after the 1953 production. But at approximately 3 hours with one intermission, the musical continues in Dedham until October 11th, 2025, and truly, this Can Can will leave you with a smile on your face. It is a must-see for the superb work done by the Sullivan Rep cast and creative team. Quantipoet Players chimes in spooky season with The House on Haunted Hill, which keeps tongue planted firmly in cheek as it unleashes a twisted tale of murder, malevolence, mayhem, the macabre, and of course, marriage. If you grew up in Massachusetts in the 70s or 80s, the Vincent Price 1959 movie version of The House on Haunted Hill, written by Rob White, was shown relentlessly on Creature Double Feature or other late-night or weekend afternoon movie shows. The House on Haunted Hill was shown so often locally that it became almost required viewing if you were into creepy, over-the-top B-horror movie flicks, and White's screenplay certainly was over-the-top as it gets. By the way, most folks instantly recall Vincent Price from the film, but seem to forget other notable actors such as the handsome leading man Richard Long of Nanny and the Professor and The Big Valley, and certainly gone from this world too soon, and legendary character actor Alicia Cook. The film's plot was more whimsical and chilling, but did a great job at holding the viewer's interest as the ludicrous plot unfolded. In the play adaptation by Tommy Jameson, that spirit of camp seems more leaned into than the ghoulish nature of the story, although the folks at Quantipoet Players have added many, many ominous and spooky special lighting and sound effects to help add to the fun. In the QP production of The House on Haunted Hill, we meet millionaire Frederick Lauren, played by Adam Huru, who becomes our guide through the tale of terror and titters. Huru is thoroughly entertaining as Lauren and keeps our attention focused on much of the twists and turns we are about to witness. Frederick's wife, fourth wife, Annabelle, played by Chris Reynolds, instantly makes one wonder what these two ever saw in one another as the barbs fly fiercely every time the couple are on stage together. Reynolds is quite good as the deceitful Annabelle, who loathes her husband, and even though she suspects and fears foul play, recalling the suspicious deaths of her predecessors, does everything in her power to remind Frederick of just how much she loathes him. For unknown or rather unclear reasons, which don't get much clearer as the tale progresses, but that was the same issue with the movie, the couple decide to have a party, a truly ghoulish, ghastly party at The House on Haunted Hill, and we're all invited to go along to witness the spectral misadventures about to befall. Aiding Frederick at the house is his faithful personal assistant, Cassidy Bowman, played by Michaela Zullo, and the Slides, Barbara Bourgeois and Ken Tucci, a ghastly elder couple that also provide most of the laughs throughout the story. Arriving at The House on Haunted Hill, in a torrential rainstorm, are 5 seemingly random selected invited guests. These guests and we shall soon discover that they have more in common than they first admit. The last thing they wanted was to be invited to spend the night at this decrepit estate on one of the worst rainstorms of the year. However, the only reason that each has agreed to this is for, of course, a purely selfish financial motivation, i.e. greed. Each person that stays alive overnight in this reportedly haunted house will receive $50,000. Just as I found watching the original movie, there are so many absurd plot twists and turns, double crosses and triple crosses, that The House on Haunted Hill ultimately proves to be a night filled less with fear and more with fun. While the above seems to be intentional, it is counterbalanced with the use of ominous or even otherworldly special effects that are all well executed. Okay, perhaps that's a poor choice of wording, but you get the idea. While founded in the horror genre, thanks to the more sardonic approach taken by Jameson in his script, this fine Cupid cast under the direction of Mark Rowley does so well with the material that they just might have you smiling more times than screaming. If so, well, that's probably okay too. At approximately 2 hours with one intermission, The House on Haunted Hill continues from Quantipoet Players in Reading, Mass. Through October 11th, 2025, and will either send shivers or giggles along one spine. For tickets and more information, contact Quantipoet Players at 781-942-2212 or email boxoffice@qptheater.com. All aboard the murder mystery train that is currently spending its dwell time at the station located in Putnam, Connecticut, with the Agatha Christie suspense thriller Murder on the Orient Express, by way of the Theater of Northeastern Connecticut, or TNECT, at the Bradley Playhouse. The two-act play is actually courtesy of Ken Ludwig, famous for his Tony Award-winning Lend Me a Tenor, who adapted the story from the novel of the same name by Agatha Christie. Ludwig himself issued a lovely personal letter of well wishes to the cast and creative team at the Bradley Playhouse, in which he stated, "When the Agatha Christie estate first asked me to adapt one of her novels, I was so incredibly honored when Murder on the Orient Express was the first selected to bring her work to the stage." Commissioned by Agatha Christie Limited, Ludwig's adaptation of Murder on the Orient Express was written in 2015 and then made its stage debut in New Jersey in 2017. From the Christie stable of fictional literary detectives, on the Orient Express we meet fussy Belgian sleuth Hercule Poirot, played by Preston Arnold in the TNEC production, replete with his trademark long, dark mustache. Arnold is just outstanding in his portrayal of Poirot, and without trying to do a standard cartoonish Poirot impersonation, he instead keeps the character more realistic and thus holds our attention from beginning to end. One of the reasons for the ongoing admiration of Christie's stories is because of the fascinating and diverse characters we meet along the way to solving a mystery, usually a mystery involving a murder, or two, or several, or even 10. Murder on the Orient Express is no different, although it is arguably one of Christie's best, and Ludwig remains truthful to the source material. Ludwig does so, yet also weaves in moments of levity to help keep the story from deteriorating into becoming too procedural, predictable, and or dull. Apparently, the creative team at TNECT also wanted to remain truthful to Ludwig's adaptation of the Christie source material, because this is a stunningly well-crafted production. Under the leadership of directors Kathleen Atwood and Scott A. Guerin, there is a phenomenal effort here by TNECT to present a visually stimulating, thought-provoking mystery that keeps us riveted from plot point to turning point and back again as this twisted tale of deceit, intrigue, and murder unfolds. Poirot catches up with an old friend, Monsieur Book, played by Jim Douglas, the manager of the Orient Express, who begs Poirot for his help after his train becomes the scene of a murder. Douglas excels at the Ludwig-infused quips for those moments requiring a dose of levity. On this disastrous train voyage from Istanbul to London, we are introduced to a group of strangers who quickly become suspects once a murder is committed on the train during a blizzard that has stopped the train cold. Pun intended. The use of the closed curtain for the opening sequences was a wise choice made by the co-directors, first allowing for projected images of the train to be used, and then secondly prompting our amazement once the curtain lifts and the inside passenger cars of the train become revealed. The intricate set design for Murder on the Orient Express is as inspired as the detailed costuming used for the production. Also, the TNEC play features the impeccable combination of specialized visual, lighting, and sound effects. Now on to the actual Murder on the Orient Express, which happens shortly after miscreant Samuel Ratchet, played by Mark Smolak, steps aboard for what he does not expect to be, spoiler alert, his last train ride. Found murdered in his bed, Poirot is asked by Bock to solve the murder, not for justice, but rather to save the company from embarrassingly catastrophic publicity. Michel, the conductor, played by Nick Hemion, who also plays a head waiter, assists both Poirot and Bock throughout the investigation. Poirot interviews Hector McQueen, played by Drew Goins, who would be a primary suspect, as he was Ratchet's personal assistant who, as Poirot learns, harbored his own dark secret for wanting Ratchet dead. But there are many more suspects who might have murdered or had a murderous motive against Ratchet, as Poirot soon discovers, in which you can read about in the full review online at METRMag.com. One suspect, though, in particular, bears mentioning. As Poirot's investigation continues, he meets another suspect, to which he finds himself conflicted due to an attraction to the alluring Countess Andrenier, played by Julianne McGurty of Hungary. Not only is the Countess intelligent and skilled in numerous areas, she is also self-assured and attractive, which is the source of Poirot's conflict. By the way, in the review, you will notice multiple allusions to the international community in these descriptions: French, Belgian, Hungarian, Scottish, Swedish, Russian, etc. Well, as far as international accents go, you may want to give a pass to some of the respective approaches taken here, because the accents tend to vary from the virtually well done to the virtually non-existent. However, none of that diminishes from the overall characterizations elicited by this delightful T-neck cast. No more than a curtain closing on top of a set piece or two during a Sunday matinee diminishes from an otherwise stellar production. Poirot uncovers connections to Ratchet's murder from a prior ghastly crime, which may help lead him to uncover the truth behind the murder on the Orient Express. At approximately 2 hours, 10 minutes with one intermission, Murder on the Orient Express continues its journey forward at the Bradley Playhouse in Putnam, Connecticut, until it reaches its final stop on October 19th, 2025. Coming up in October, Sardines, a comedy about death, written and performed by Chris Grace, will be at the very busy Huntington Theatre Company in Boston from September 30th to November 16th. 300 paintings by Sam Kisajukian at the American Repertory Theatre will take place in Cambridge, running from October 1st to October 19th. William Shakespeare's Macbeth will be at the Actors Shakespeare Project, taking place in Watertown from October 2nd to October 26th. Dungeons and Dragons, the 20-Sided Tavern, will be at the Bach Center Schubert Theater in Boston for a limited engagement, running from October 3rd through October 5th. Cole Porter's Anything Goes opens tonight at Theater at the Mountain Gardener from October 3rd through October 12th. Ken Ludwig's adaptation of Agatha Christie's Murder on the Orient Express also rolls into the theater at Northeastern Connecticut at the Bradley Playhouse in Putnam, Connecticut, starting tonight, October 3rd, running through October 19th. The Clumsy Custard Horror Show by William Gleason takes place at the Gateway Players in Southbridge, Mass. from October 4th to October 12th. Misery by William Goldman, based on the novel by Stephen King, is at the Stadium Theater down in Woonsocket, Rhode Island, from October 6th to October 9th. Churchill, written by and starring David Payne, will be at the BCA Calderwood in Boston for a limited engagement, starting October 7th, running only until October 12th. The musical Tick, Tick, Boom by Jonathan Larson of Rent fame plays at the Umbrella Art Center in Concord from October 10th to November 23rd, while Six, the fabulous musical by Toby Marlowe and Lucy Moss, hits the stage at the Hanover Theater for the Performing Arts in Worcester from October 14th to October 19th, Finally, at least for this week, Noel Coward's Blithe Spirit will float into the New Players Theater Guild stage in Fitchburg from October 10th through October 19th. Well, that's all we have for this week. I hope you have a fabulous weekend, a long weekend for some of you, not all, not me, and that you'll tune in again next Friday to find out what else is happening in Massachusetts theater. Take care, and we'll see you next time. Enjoy the weekend. Bye-bye.